everybody, and welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker. And today, we're going to remember Superman 2, which, frankly, in my estimation, was the best of the Christopher Reeve Superman films. And why? Well, because you had a tremendous cast. I mean, the first cast was fabulous. We talked about it last night. Wonderful cast. This cast in Superman 2, you had not only Gene Hackman returning as Lex Luthor, but now you had the greatness of Terrence Stamp taking the reins as General Zod, the best General Zod that the Superman franchise has seen on film. And he completely steals the show, if you ask me. Superman Part 2 would be released in 1980. Now, the controversy and the backstory to Superman 2 is kind of extraordinary. The producers wanted to film Superman, the first Superman movie, and Superman 2 simultaneously with Richard Donner. The Puzo script was immense. It was over 400 pages. And they liked how he introduced Zod and Ursa and Nan in the beginning, that set up their vengeful pursuit of the son of Jor-El in Part 2. I mean, it just made sense, right? Richard Donner, who directed the first Superman film, was against this, and they filmed about, I would say, 70% of the second film before Donner was replaced by another director named Richard Lester. They completed principal photography and with Lester, and they released Superman 2 about a year and a half later. If you haven't seen Superman 2, you're missing out. It's a tremendous film. Now, as we know, at the beginning of Superman, the movie, first film, Zod, Ursa, and Nan are banished to the Phantom Zone. Years later, the Phantom Zone is shattered near Earth by the shockwave of a hydrogen bomb thrown from Earth by Superman himself. Zod and his group are freed, and they find themselves with these superpowers granted to them by the Yellow Sun, which of course empowers Superman. They land on the moon, and they kill a team of astronauts exploring parts of the moon. And they continue towards Earth to conquer the planet. Now, the lead up to this is, of course, Superman is in Paris. Lois Lane is in Paris. I think there was a terrorist, like a terrorist attack there, or there was going to be a terrorist attack. They had a hydrogen bomb. Superman comes, of course, subdues the terrorists, takes the bomb, flies it to space, and throws it into space so it doesn't harm anybody. And this is how Zod and Ursa and Nan are released. The funny part about this whole thing is when they killed the astronauts, one of the astronauts is calling for help, and he's calling Houston, right? The base in Houston, Texas. So Zod believes that Earth is called Houston. So he refers to the planet as Houston all the time. And Terrence Stamp, as I said, was immense in this film. As Zod and Ursa and Nan are now headed, they land on Earth into this, backwards little town somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Clark Kent and Lois Lane are on a mission, or on a journalistic they're on a job to go to Niagara Falls. There, Superman saves a little boy who falls near the falls, and of course, Lois Lane looks for Clark Kent. He's nowhere to be seen, of course, and she suspects that he is Superman. So what does she do? She jumps over the railing into the rapid waters. Clark Kent doesn't turn into Superman. He bumblingly tries to save her, nearly getting himself killed. Of course, he can't die from that. And Lois Lane, of course, feels like a fool because she thinks that Clark Kent, this cowardly, simpleton, is Superman, right? That night, in their hotel room, in their hotel suite, because they're posing as newlyweds, Clark, drying off, slips and falls, and his hand falls into the fireplace. And of course, nothing happens to him because he's Superman. And Lois Lane checks his hand, and she sees that he's not injured at all, and she puts two and two together. And finally, Clark reveals that he is indeed Superman himself. He takes her to the Fortress of Solitude. He shows her the traces of his past, the stored energy within the crystals, all that good stuff. Superman tells Lois that he loves her, and he wants to spend the rest of his life with her. Now, Superman then confers with his artificial intelligence mother, Lara, and Superman asks to remove his superpowers, to expose himself to red kryptonite sunlight in this crystal chamber to become immortal. His mother warns him, saying, listen, you do this, you can't go back. There's no turning back. You will be an ordinary man. You will, grow old like a man. You will get sick like a man. You can be hurt like a man. And he says, I don't care. I love Lois. I want Lois, right? Now, you would think Lois Lane, and this is typical woman for you, right? You would think Lois Lane would think for the greater good, right? Say, hey, come on, you mean too much to humanity. You mean way too much to humanity just to give yourself up for little old me. But no, she's all for it. And so while Superman goes into the chamber, he gets exposed to the red sunlight. He loses his power. Now he's a regular guy. Zod and his cohorts terrorize this little town. They destroy the National Guard with ease. And they travel to the White House. And they force the president to kneel before him. Now, of course, that's the great scene where Zod tells the president to kneel. He kneels. At first, it's not the president; it's some other guy, and Zod knows it. He reads right through it. So the president kneels for him, but before he kneels, he says, "There will be one man who will never kneel before you." And Zod, in one of his more brilliant lines, says, "Who is this imbecile? Where is he?" And the president kneels, and he goes, "Oh God!" And Zod looks at him, and he goes, "Zod." It's great. Terrence Stamp is fantastic. Their outfits are hilarious, by the way. They have like these puffy shirts and slacks on. While all this is happening, Clark and Lois are in Alaska. And Lois, while Clark is in the bathroom, is harassed by a truck driver. Clark tries to step in, and the truck driver beats the shit out of Clark. Right, and this is the first time he's ever seen blood, his own blood. While Lois is tending to Clark's wounds, on TV, the president makes a speech proclaiming that Zod is now the ruler of the world. The president also implores that Superman help. Where are you, Superman? And Zod interrupts him. And he says, I defy you, Superman. Where are you? You will kneel before me. You will kneel before Zod. Of course, Clark sees this and he's in shock. And he realizes that Zod and Ursa and Non are from another planet. I don't think at this time he realizes that they're Kryptonians, but he knows that they're all powerful and they can't be stopped. And he goes back to the Fortress of Solitude to try to restore his powers and save the planet. Lois tells him that it's too late, right? Women are always like that. You can't do this. There's no way you can do this. It's over. But Clark, as much as he's a Boy Scout, as much as Superman is a Boy Scout, he never ever stopped believing in himself. He has his doubts. He does. That's again the Jesus factor, right? Jesus had doubts. But Clark returns to the fortress and he finds the original green crystal left on the floor. And it was spared from the control module destroys all the other crystals after Superman becomes human, but not the green crystal. And so this green crystal was what was able to restore Superman back to Clark Kent back into Superman. Gene Hackman, of course, makes his entrance as he escapes jail with poor little Otis. Miss Tessmacher comes in a balloon. She throws down a rope ladder. He climbs up it. Poor Otis is just too fat and stupid to be able to climb up the ladder, and he is, of course, left behind. And the guards catch him. And as Lex floats away, Otis gives an innocent wave, which is pretty sad but pretty funny at the same time. They don't go back to Metropolis. What they do is they go back to the fortress. They go to the Fortress of Solitude. And this is where Luthor learns of Superman's connections to Jor-El and General Zod, which he's going to now use to his advantage. He goes back to the White House and he finds Zod hunkered down in the White House and tells him that Superman is the son of Jor-El. And he offers Superman in exchange for Australia, right? Because he likes waterfront property. Just hilarious. It's a great exchange if you ever see it, because Zod wants to initially kill him, but Luthor is just too smart. The three Kryptonians, they ally with Luthor and they go to the Daily Planet. They tear up the place. They find Lois Lane. And Superman arrives. And when I was in the movie theater, I was a 6-year-old boy. The movie theater was packed. When Superman came on the screen and he said, "General Zod, would you like to step outside?" The place, I remember this. This is over 40 years ago. The place went berserk. It was. Movies used to be magical. They're not magical anymore now, especially when they're streaming. You watch them at home. You don't get that experience anymore. But movies back then were tremendous. It was a great feeling. The walking in there, the smell of the popcorn and all that good stuff. I mean, I know it sounds corny, but Superman arrives and his powers are back and he battles all three. Zod realizes that Superman has a weakness for humans. And he takes advantage of this by attacking bystanders. Right? There's that awesome scene where he takes the bus and he throws the bus around and he's, destroying different, large signs and having them fall onto a crowd. And Superman has to save these people. Right? He can't fight these guys and save these people at the same time. They're taking advantage of this. Superman realizes the only way that he can fight Zod and stop Zod and the others is to lure them away from Metropolis and lure them to the fortress. So Zod and the rest of the Kryptonians are in pursuit of him, but they kidnap Lois Lane, taking along Lex Luthor. At the Fortress of Solitude, Superman tries to convince Luthor to lure the three into the chamber to depower them. Luthor, of course, he's a shiesty bastard. He reveals the trick. So Zod forces Superman into the chamber and activates it. After assuming, when Superman goes in there is a red light that shines on the screen while Superman is in the chamber. Assuming that he's now deprived of his powers, Zod tells Superman to kneel before him. And he takes his hand and he tells Superman that he must swear eternal loyalty to him. When Superman takes his hand, he crushes Zod's hand and tosses him into a crevice where he just disappears. Luther decides that Superman reconfigured, deduces, I should say, Superman reconfigured the chamber to expose the trio to red light while Superman is protected from it inside the chamber. Non falls into the crevice as well, trying to fly over it, but he's too stupid. Non, of course, is not the smartest, sharpest knife in the drawer. Lois punches Ursa in the face, and she falls in the third crevice. And Superman flies back to civilization, returning Lois home and leaving Lex stranded in the fortress. Now, the next day, of course, Lois knows who Superman is, and she knows who Clark is. Clark kisses Lois back at the Daily Planet, and he uses his abilities to wipe her mind of the knowledge of the past few days. And of course, Lois sees Clark as Clark, not Superman anymore, and she asks him for a hamburger like at 9 o'clock in the morning. The funny part about the movie before it ends is Superman returns to Alaska to confront the truck driver that humiliated him. With his restored powers, uh, he just pushes he handles the trucker easily. And then, of course, there's the patriotic scene where Superman takes the American flag and places it back on top of the White House, and he tells the president that he'll never abandon his duty again. Of course, this part here, of course, is what many people believe gave Frank Miller the inspiration to write The Dark Knight, because if you ever read The Dark Knight, which is one of the greatest graphic novels ever written, Superman is pretty much the lackey for the president of the United States. More so in that book than ever in any of the movies. But it was a tremendous film. It was great. Reeves, of course. Hackman was tremendous. Uh, Margot Kidder was very good. But the guy who stole the show, if you ask me, was Terrence Stamp as Zod. He was wonderful. I mean, it's just so many classic lines in that movie. So many things that he does. The blowing of when the crowd is coming after them, they sit there and they just blow wind at them, and they blow all these people away. They talk about the helicopters, how they need machines to fly. It's just it was a really, really cool movie. And the film did pretty well. It didn't do as well as the first film. Now, the film made, I think, at the time, it cost $54 million to make the second film, and it made about $260 million at the time in the box office, which is still a tremendous film. Not as much as the first one, of course, but the backstory of this Donner being fired during production and being replaced. I mean, if you've ever been on a film set, firing somebody in the middle of production is incredibly expensive and incredibly risky, because everybody has their own interpretations of character and theme and all that shit. By October of 77, Hackman, Valerie Prin, and Ned Beatty had already completed their scenes, so they were gone. They were all under contract for both finished films, but they had already filmed their scenes months before. And Warner Brothers granted studio rights to foreign distributors and TV airings in exchange for more financing by the producers, because they were just hemorrhaging money at this point. The film was more of a rock'em sock'em type thing. I mean, there was fighting in it. There was tremendous action in it. Whereas in the first Superman movie, there was nobody really to fight Superman. Right? I mean, when we get introduced to Superman in Metropolis, when he's the crime fighter, he basically, he breaks, he finds guys who are stealing cars, and people breaking into banks and all that other stuff, and he handles them easy. Here we find out Superman's gusto, his machismo. He gets to punch people, and this is, I think, was lost in a lot of Superman films that came after, especially some of the TV shows like Lois and Clark, uh, where he's basically getting his ass kicked in every episode, and he has to be saved by other people. The music, of course, was by John Williams again, and the film the film got an 88 approval rating. Uh, got about a 7.5 rating by some critics. Audiences saw the film as an A+ because of Superman kicking ass. Roger Ebert, of course, gave Superman 2 4 stars out of 4 stars. And he writes, and I quote, "The movie's most intriguing insight is that Superman's disguise as Clark Kent isn't a matter of looks as much as a mental of attitude. Clark is disguised not by his glasses, but by his ordinariness. Beneath this meek exterior, of course, is conceived a superhero. And the movie subtly hints, isn't that the case with us all?" That's a very interesting take by Roger Ebert, because Quentin Tarantino in Kill Bill 2 writes a wonderful dialogue about Superman and Clark Kent, the dichotomy of these two, and how Clark Kent is more us, humanity. He represents humanity, and we'll go over that scene in Kill Bill as the days go by. But Superman 2 to me was well, not to me, but was my favorite of the uh, of the Superman franchise films, even the new ones that have been rebooted. Now, I haven't seen this new one, of course. It hasn't been released yet worldwide. I will see it this weekend. I've heard some contrasting things. I mean, I heard some people say it's woke. I've heard some people say it's dope. I heard some people say it's and I heard some people say it's great. We'll see. We'll see. James Gunn is not a bad director. I think he's more of these like action type guys. I wouldn't say he's as bad as Michael Bay, but he's not the guy that's gonna he's not gonna make a Scorsese film. So put it to you that way. But he's pretty good, and I think he is a comic book fan, so I think he does get it. I read a review where this is straight out of the animated series and the comics, which if that's the case, that's fantastic. That would be fantastic. Years later, of course, the Superman 2 would come out, and it would be dubbed the Richard Donner cut. And there was additional footage that was cut from the theatrical release. Um it implied that Superman had killed the three Kryptonians, which is not what Superman does, even though in the Man of Steel he does kill Zod. Superman's strict code of honor is that he does not kill. In the extended ending, uh, in the U.S., the Parlor Patrol is shown picking up three Kryptonians and Lex Luthor, after which Superman and Lois Lane standing beside him, destroy the Fortress of Solitude. So there was some additional footage there. I think that they eliminated that because they knew that they were greedy. They wanted to get more sequels, of course. But I love this film, and I remember seeing it as a little boy, and it was fantastic. And like I said, Terrence Stamp stole the show, absolutely stole the show in this film. And if you haven't seen it, you should. It's a great, 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 great film. And with all the drama that happened at the behind the scenes during the production of this movie, it turned out to be a great, great movie. E.G. Marshall, of course, plays the president. Jackie Cooper comes back to play Perry White. Gene Hackman refused to do reshoots, but he filmed enough where he was significant in this film. And of course, Ned Beatty and Valerie Prin, they were in it a little bit, but not that much. But they were in it significantly, but this was not a Gene Hackman superhero film. This was Terrence Stamp's film. He is known, of course, for many, many brilliant films that he has been in. A wonderful actor, a very distinct look and speech. I think he got his I don't know if this was his big break, but he became world famous for that role as General Zod. I think he got a couple of Academy Award nominations later in his career. Of course, he was in Wall Street. He was in uh, Elektra. He was in the Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. He was in Young Guns. So he's been in a lot of movies. He's got to be close to 90 now, if he's still alive. I don't know. I got to check. But he's a brilliant actor, and he was brilliant in this. And as I said, he steals the film. He steals the show in this. In my favorite Superman movie. So that's the review for this Wednesday night, Superman 2. Tomorrow we will look at Man of Steel, which I was pleasantly surprised with when it first came out. I was very, very on the fence. Smallville carried me for almost 11 years with that great show, and it was a tremendous show. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, we'll break it up into different parts because it's hard to talk about a show that had 11 years worth of footage. But we'll talk about Man of Steel tomorrow night, and we'll try to get Smallville and another Superman film in there, and of course the review of the last of this upcoming Superman movie. We'll also try to talk about real quick Batman versus Superman, which is based on that great graphic novel by Frank Miller, written in 1986, I think it was. I was a teenage boy when that happened, and I loved it. I didn't agree with what how they portrayed Superman. I certainly didn't agree with the fact that they had Batman beating his ass, which is bullshit. But we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. All right. So how do we leave you? Thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Let me know if these pop culture things are what you'd rather see. More music, more movies, more TV, more comic books, even video games. I'm always playing video games with my son. He beats the shit out of me, but that's fine. But be careful out there, my friends. Satan is always busy. Be a man. Have a backbone, because common sense and masculinity are worth standing up for. We'll see you later.